Hey everyone, this is Fabio and welcome back, and today we're going to finally make a game discussion video as we're going to talk about the latest game that I beat that had completely take over all my gaming time, and that is of course The Legend of Heroes Stress in the Sky second chapter. My most anticipated game since the end of the first Stress in the Sky. Because as we know, that game had a very difficult localization history due to the difficulties by Exceed, the company who localized this game here to the West. And for this reason, I just want to say a big thank you to Exceed because of their efforts, insane effort in bringing this game. Because at the end, when first chapter was released, we didn't have any insurance that the second part of the trilogy would be released as well, because like the first game didn't do as well as it should, unfortunately, because it's an RPG on the PSP if you think about it. So for a long time, all of us who absolutely loved the first game, we kept waiting and waiting, hoping for the release of the second game. And let's say at one point, it's not that I lost interest in the game, of course not, but I didn't follow anymore, like constantly hoping to find a news regarding it, like, oh yes, the game is coming. So when it was actually announced, I looked on the internet one day, completely randomly, say like, oh, second chapter, it's coming like next month. I was like, oh, completely unexpected. So when it was finally released, and digitally only, unfortunately, but it's better than nothing in this case. The important thing is playing this amazing game. I downloaded it towards the end of Christmas and played it right after the Christmas holidays at the beginning of January, and I finally finished it yesterday, actually. And this game was an incredible experience. Before getting too much into the story and everything, let me just tell you something that I told on the internet to like a Facebook group or something, that I haven't enjoyed a JRPG so much since the PlayStation 1 days. For how much as I loved like RPGs, like contemporary RPGs, second chapter has something very special that reminded me of the glorious golden days of the genre during the PlayStation 1. Like, it reminded me how much I've enjoyed playing games since like Breath of Fire 3 or 4, Legend of Dragoon, Final Fantasy 9, like, because for those days had something special. With RPGs of those days were special. They have this untouchable quality behind them. There were bad ones, but for the most part, we have also some nostalgia on that, but that was the golden age of RPGs. And second chapter made me feeling like I was back to those days and enjoying a JRPG like crazy, and mainly because of the strongest point of this game, which are of course the story and the character development. All of this with amazing music and a gameplay that's it's perfection to me. So just on this note, let's just start with the story of second chapter. And unfortunately, I cannot tell you too much about it because, as the title suggests, this is the second part of a bigger story, of a trilogy, of course, as you know. I mean, there are 3 Stress in the Sky games, and second chapter is the middle chapter. And to tell the story will probably spoil the first game, and if you haven't played it, and if you haven't, I cannot understand why, because you need to play that game since it's one of the greatest RPGs of recent times. Just to give you an idea, the story of second chapter starts immediately at the end of the first one. It just continues from that damn cliffhanger at the end of the first game that now it's got resolved. So, and from that, it focuses on, you can say, a sort of parallel stories. There is, on one side, there is this personal journey of Estelle, while on the other hand, there is this big plot that unfolds, and Estelle is also at the center of this with her friends from both bracers and non-bracers, in order to basically save the Kingdom of Liberal from this this plot organized by this secret society. By saying this, I'm not spoiling anything. I'm trying to keep it as spoiler-free as possible, because also the story is so big in a way, and it's not even over. Just a small thing I want to add. And basically, progressively during the story, weird events starting to happen all around the kingdom, and it's up to you to understand what's happening, who's behind this. Pieces all, like, putting all of this together, and by the end you actually start to understand what this plan actually is, and of course how to stop it. And I know this is very vague, but I feel I don't want to go too much into details, because as I said, that would ruin the experience of the first game. And as I said, I hope that you've played it, but in case you haven't, I cannot be too sure. So basically, and also I really summarized it, because this is a huge game. It's really big. I've heard that second chapter is supposed to be a 100 hours game. Personally, it took me 73 hours to beat it, but I didn't do everything possible in the game. Like, the story per se is very big, but also there are plenty of side quests. There are other things you can do. Like in my case, I didn't spend too much time fishing. I basically didn't look for recipes, those kind of things. Thinking other things you can do, like I didn't explore the whole map, but almost all of it. Like I think I had like 98% of locations, and especially like side quests. I think something that might take a lot of time, because at the beginning I didn't do all of them. I skipped some, but not too many. But after like the prologue and the first chapter, I did all the side quests, because they're very, very helpful. I mean, of course you can make some useful experience, find useful quartz, you can find interesting items. So I highly recommend it to do the side quests. They're also funny. I mean, and also they're kind of connected with the story of specific characters. I mean, they kind of complete this bigger picture that it's the story of the characters, and that is absolutely, I think, the main strength of second chapter. Is this big story, but to me, the character development and the interaction between the characters is absolutely where this game shines. All the rest is great, but I'm just like speechless on that, the level of characterization and character development of this game. Something that was already seen in first chapter, but it was, I think, mainly focused for right reasons on Joshua and Estelle and the relationship between the two. But in here, it goes so much deeper than that. Of course, as I said, there is this journey, the personal journey of Estelle, which allows us to know her even better, but also it improves like her relationship with the other characters of this massive universe. And there are plenty of characters, some unforgettable ones, others, I kind of like all of them in a way. Like, my personal favorite characters, other than Estelle and Joshua, were of course Sherazade and Oliver. Of course, I mean, still from the first game. But in here, for example, Sherazade was even better, I think, to me, because you understand more about her personal story that you didn't know in the first game. And one thing that I really appreciated was the way they explain better the relationship between Estelle and Sherazade, why they are so close to each other. Basically, it explains better why Sherazade is basically Estelle's big sister, and you understand more about other characters like Agathe or like Zane, like Chloe. All the characters are much more there's all this story, the personal stories of their character, how they're connected to each other, how they're connected to the villains as well. Of course, it's something I just briefly mentioned there, but especially, let me say, especially, other than Joshua, of course, but also like Sherzad and Zane have a big connection with the main villains. There's a small spoiler there, I couldn't resist, but sorry about that, but it's a big part in the development of those characters as well. And as talking about the villains, of course, they're very well done. Like characters like Blue Blanc, Walter, Luciola, Ren, and of course Loey. These are great villains, very interesting ones. But absolutely, I mean, Loey steals the shows. I hope I'm saying his name right, but that is one great character. I absolutely loved it. In a way, it reminds me of how much I like this kind of like complex villains, because at the end of the day you might ask, is he a villain? And it reminded me of how I wanted Madram from Tear Vermilion to be, like more antagonistic, but at the same time that he helps the development of the main character. I mean, the relationship between Loey and Joshua, for example, it's very explored in this game, and it's so good, so tragic, of course, but Loey, it's such a great character. I absolutely loved him. It's one of the main characters of the game, without a doubt. It's very important for the development of different characters, not only Joshua, and his role in the story and his role within the society. It's such a good character. But as I say, I can say this for all of characters. I mean, I haven't seen characters so well developed in a long time, starting from the main character to all the secondary characters. Such an amazing job there. And I can understand why Exit was having so much problem with the translation and localization of this game. There is a ton of dialogues. Not that I mind, of course, but so many dialogues. But of course, it's part of the development of the story. But at least I can understand the trouble. So another thing that, of course, I have to mention, and I absolutely loved about this game, is the combat system. One thing that I cannot understand nowadays of RPGs is this necessity to, you can say, reinvent the wheel every time. RPGs basically need to do something different from the traditional turn-based mechanics, which to me, it's still the best. I'm sorry. I understand that it's old school and we already played tons of games like this, but I think the traditional turn-based combat system, it's still the best. It's the one that works the better. We have this mechanic in Trace Sky mixed with a bit of strategy RPG style. So there is a grid where you can place your characters, and from there, in a sort of turn-based system, you fight your enemies. That's it. You don't need overly complicated, weird combat system. It's that simple, I think. And Trace in the Sky does it perfectly, I think. It's very simple. It's very intuitive. It works perfectly. And really showing to me how the traditional turn-based is the best combat system for RPGs, no matter what. And it's not that I enjoyed like more modern combat system. I tried many, and some of them are very, very well done, but I still think that the simplicity of the classic traditional turn-based system, it's still the best and the one that works better for RPGs in general. As I say, this is a sort of combination of traditional and strategy combat system, and it works so well. And this combat system, it's absolutely amazing to me. I mean, you can see on the left side of the screen like whose turn is, so you can strategically plan your move. Like you can attack an enemy which is right after you, or you can like attack an enemy in order to block block him, or like if he's preparing arts or something like that. I mean, there's a ton of possibilities with this battle system in its kind of simplicity, because it's kind of simple. If we look at some RPGs on PS3 or something like that, which with weird combat system, it's like, why are you doing this? This is not necessary. I mean, I understand that the basic idea that, in a way, people get tired easily or something, so you need constantly to change it. I think it's not necessary. I play so many games with battle systems that, to me, are not that interesting, even overly complicated. I mean, just keep it simple, turn-based. That's the best way to go, easily. And like, I'm playing Trails of Cold Steel, Sen no Kiseki now. Of course, I couldn't resist on the Vita, and that's the same thing. It's just look a bit more like current generation. It's still a turn-based RPG. It just looked like a bit updated version of the Trails in the Sky combat system, showing that a combat system like that doesn't need changing because it works perfectly. And where do we even start with the music of this game? I mean, of course, what can you expect from JDK, from Falcom? Naturally, the soundtrack is amazing in this game. I mean, it has tracks from the first game. It has new tracks, and they're so good. It's just, JDK members are so great. I mean, it's easily, I think, one of the best music in the industry. Falcom has this ace in their sleeve with JDK. I mean, just like the Ys games or the other Legend of Heroes games, you are sure to have amazing music in these games. Like I said, I'm playing Trails of Cold Steel. The soundtrack is so good that I'm kind of regretting not buying the special edition because I want the soundtrack, but I thought I'll buy it in another moment. There's no rush. There's no rush. Even though listening to some tracks on that, I really want to buy that soundtrack now. We will see what you can do. But with second chapter as well, the soundtrack is so good. I know I'm going to buy it sometime because it's really an amazing soundtrack, perfect for every moment. Like you have some somber, sad, emotional tracks in specific moment of the story. Very like amazing piece of music where you're more adventuring, or like a very emotional music when, I don't know, Estelle is talking with very breakdown characters like Joshua or Ren. I mean, that music while you listen to these amazing dialogues was perfect. But again, as I said, listening to these sound of more newish soundtracks, I was like, JDK strikes again. Perfect soundtrack. So I need to buy so many of the music. It's insane. Like, I want to buy the soundtrack for more Ys games or more Legend of Heroes games, but it's not easy. But absolutely brilliant soundtrack. Also, we should mention, I believe, the future of the series. It's something with a big question mark above it, I believe, because, of course, as we all know, and we should rush buying it, there is Trails of Cold Steel available for both PS3 and on the Vita. And in all honesty, my thought was, why would I bother buying this game on PS3? This is the perfect game for the Vita. Like, I'm playing it right now, and that's funny because yesterday, like, in the morning, I was playing second chapter because I was basically at the end. I said, let's try finish it, and I finished it. Then after that, like in late evening, after a long day at work, I was like, let's try Trails of Cold Steel because I'm also playing Aria of Sorrow at the same time. And I was there with my relaxing and say, let's play something. I was about to take the Game Boy Advance, my DS, which is also, of course, my Game Boy Advance, and said, well, let's try Trails of Cold Steel for curiosity. And of course, I played it for 4 hours. I didn't realize it, and after a while, I look outside. It's like, what happened? It's all dark. It was already dark, but still, I look at the... actually, no, I was looking at the hours, like, what? It's 3 a.m.? Like, what happened? But that's how good the game is. I mean, Trails of Cold Steel, it's phenomenal. So I cannot recommend that game enough. The interesting thing is now we have the first two Trails in the Sky and Trails of Cold Steel, which before I said the Japanese name, which is Sen no Kiseki. Unfortunately, as we all know, 3 games are missing between second chapter and Trails of Cold Steel. There is third, the conclusion of the Trails in the Sky trilogy, and the 2 Crossbell games, Zero no Kiseki and Ao no Kiseki. And in all honesty, I have no idea if we'll ever have those games. I was reading around the internet after I played second chapter. Of course, I said, "Wow, I want to play the third immediately," because again, there is a sort of kinda, not so much, but a sort of cliffhanger towards the end, not at the specific end, because I think second chapter closes a chapter, no pun intended, but closes a big part of that story, but it's not over. In some regards it is, but if you finish the game, you know what I mean. It's not over. There's still something that needs to be done in order to really end this part of the story. But of course there are 2 more games after the third, and then there is the Trails of Cold Steel trilogy. I think that's the third Sen no Kiseki game was just released in Japan or something like that. So, and my hope is that logically we're looking at this series. I mean, there is the Trails in the Sky trilogy that takes place in the Kingdom of Liberal. There is what I call the Crossbell saga, so the 2 Zero and Ao no Kiseki that takes place in Crossbell, and now there we have the Legend. I keep wanting to say the full title, The Legend of Heroes: Trails of Cold Steel. That takes place in Erebonian. Logically, I thought maybe we'll have a 4th, maybe final trilogy in the Calvard Republic. So in total, we'll have like 11 games out of the Legend of Heroes series. That's my, I mean, as I said, logically, it sounds like a sensible way to do it, because 3 out of 4 of the main countries of this continent have been explored now. Logically, we need to go to the Calvard Republic after, and we'll see. We'll see. I have no idea. It's just speculation at this point. But boy, this was something that I was thinking before playing second chapter, of how much, after playing the first Trails in the Sky and the 3 Gagav games, how much I love the Legend of Heroes series. Because I was thinking about it like months ago now, but a long time ago I saw a video by RPG Swagman, now Wonders to the Past, about favorite RPG series. I'm sure there are plenty of other videos, and I was thinking, well, let's try to make a list for myself of my favorite RPG series, so in the future I can make a video about it. Why not? I was surprised of how high the Legend of Heroes actually was in this list. I'll not tell you where, but I was really surprised, but not surprised at the same time, because these games are so good. I mean, I said it before, but second chapter is nothing short of a masterpiece. It requires, of course, to play the first game first. So that's the reason why I couldn't tell too much about this story, which is amazing. It's such a good story from both like the overall story, but I prefer even more the personal stories of these characters. It's done so well, but I cannot tell you because it's a huge. It will be massive spoilers all the way. But by playing these games, you're so attached to these characters. It's amazing how well their development are developed, and like as I said, like characters like Sherazard, of Estelle and Joshua, Oliver, Zane, Agate, Tita, all of them. These are great characters, and it's interesting that it's not a spoiler, but it's interesting that towards the end, you're able to use 2 new characters like as a permanent members of your party, and even though they've been present in the series, I wasn't so attached to them, and I didn't want to use them. It's weird because they're strong, they're really good characters, and those are, I can say, it's not a spoiler. There are Julia Schwartz and Mueller, the Oliver's companion in the first game. I cannot tell you who he is. I was like, oh, cool, I can use them. But like while forming my party list, I don't want to like use them because I prefer to use these other characters. Like since I had to use my party Joshua and Estelle. I said the other two, of course, have to have Sherazard, and the fourth one I went with Agathe, for example. So but all these other, I wanted a party of like, I don't know, 10 characters because I love these characters so much. But these new ones, I mean, they're cool characters. I like them, but I cannot choose them rather than the others, which I'm much more attached to. That was interesting, I think. And speaking of combat, as I said before, I was talking about the combat system. Let me tell you, this game is not easy, but I didn't die as many times as playing first chapter. In the first chapter, I kind of underestimated some enemies, so sometimes I didn't prepare well for the battles and died. In this game, other than some really hard battles, usually I did very well. I quit. Also, almost forgot, connected with this, it's of course the orb system. I love that system. Like, it reminds me in a way the materia system of Final Fantasy VII, which is one of the coolest thing in that game. Basically, you find these quartz called orbs that allows you to make orbs, which allows you basically to use magic, but they also improve your stats. And this system, I think, organized very simple, but it works. It's very well done. I absolutely love this system. And connected with this, like I was saying, I equipped the very right orbs for for all the various characters. Like I made Estelle a very physical character. The same with Agathe, of course, but with Sherazard, she had really strong physical and magic attacks. Joshua was very varied. Chloe, for example, she had, of course, more prone to support, mainly in terms of healing, and all of that. It depends on the characters. Like, I was very happy how I made the orbs of Oliver, for example. He was excellent in orb arts. Even though, like, physically he's not very strong, but he's excellent as support. The same with Tita. Zane, of course, he is the tank, of course, so you equip him with very high defense, mainly. But I made a very well-balanced party, so the difficulty of this game was very well-balanced as well. But there was one instance which it was absolutely insanely difficult, and that it's interesting also the comparison that I've made. It's the second to last boss battle, basically. It's no surprise, of course, it's the final battle against Loie. That battle, it's one of the hardest I ever fought in an RPG history to me. That was brutal, to say the least. And I couldn't do it. I think I died at least 6 times in that battle. 6 times in a row, because sometimes in one turn, it just slaughtered me. So be prepared when you reach that point. That battle, it's insanely difficult. Much more than the final battle. And it's interesting that it reminded me of Breath of Fire 2 in that way. And that's fantastic. It's one of my favorite games ever. As you have, like, the second to final battle, you have to face the demon or something, Barberry. And that battle, it's so difficult. And then you have to face the final battle against Saint Eve. And it's not that difficult. It is hard, but not that hard. Especially, like, if you decide to face Barberry on your own. That's really challenging. But it kind of reminds me of this thing, like the second to last boss, the more interesting one, you might say, it's also the most difficult in the game. It's a brilliant move. I don't know if they took inspiration by Breath of Fire 2. I don't think so, in all honesty. But it's interesting that it reminded me that. And that's fantastic, as I say, one of my favorite games ever. So, I can keep going talking about everything regarding the second chapter, but let me just conclude this video by saying, if you like RPGs, you have to play the Legend of Heroes games. You need to play the Trails in the Sky games. Absolutely. They are a must for RPG fans. These are some of the finest RPGs in a long time. I mean, of this and last generation, easily the best RPGs. And after that, you must play Trails of Cold Steel. It's amazing. It's so good. I cannot say how much I'm enjoying that game. But second chapter, it's a fantastic experience in terms of story and character development with an amazing soundtrack. I cannot say enough good things. You need to buy this game. And also, the sales of this game will probably be instrumental in the remote eventuality of getting the third, of course. So buy this game. If not because it will be instrumental of getting the third part of the series. But that it's a big if, there's no certainty. But we need more Legend of Heroes games. These are some of the best RPGs, as I say, in a long time. But as I say, if you are an RPG fan, you probably know all of this, but I cannot stress this enough. These games are so good that you need to play them. And with that say, I'm going to stop because I can get lost in maybe start talking about Trails of Cold Steel and no. So let's stop here and thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time and take care.